Well, she's a musician with a southern soulfulness that some people say shouldn't rightly belong to a hippie kid who spent most of her youth in. Admirers of Gillian Welch will tell you those people are wrong. After moving to Nashville in the early 1990s, it didn't take her long to earn a reputation as one of the most accomplished songwriters around and with a voice to match. And through 4 albums of unsentimental, pared-down music, you get the sense that she's able to stand perfectly still as the nonsense of modern life rushes around her. And in so doing, she delivers full immersion into the grit of human failings, temptation, and tragedy. She makes some joyful noise in the process. Gillian Welch and her collaborator, David Rawlings, are so committed to staying grounded in a time and a place that they've given up on the dislocation of airplanes in favor of a long cross-country tour in a big old Cadillac. Lately, she's been busy collaborating on other albums, but the mournful cry from her waiting fans has finally been answered. Her 5th album, titled The Harrow and the Harvest, has arrived, and Gillian Welch joins us here in Studio Q. Hello to you.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you for being here, and you're joined, of course, by your longtime collaborator, the man Rolling Stone called America's most low-key guitar hero, David Rawlings. Nice to have you here.
I'm very glad to be here.
Are you two really driving everywhere in a Cadillac? Is there some giant whale of a car parked somewhere around this building right now?
Yeah.
Tell me more about it.
We found the only parking space in Toronto, and we're actually in it with a giant Cadillac.
What has that been like for you?
Really good. We're back to, we just drive, the two of us, in the Cadillac. And so far, so good.
No gear, no roadies?
No, they're in another vehicle. We're a caravan. Yeah.
You're going to start us off with a song. What are you going to play for us?
This is a song called The Way It Will Be. It's the oldest song on the new record. Some people had been knowing it for years as Throw Me a Rope, but it's really called The Way It Will Be.
All right.
I lost you a while ago, still I don't know why. I can't say your name without a crow flying by. I gotta watch my back now that you turn me around. Got me walking backwards into my hometown. Throw me a rope on the rolling tide. What did you want it to be? You said it's him or me. The way you made it, that's the way it will be. We were 7 years on the Burma shore with Gatling guns and paint. Working the lowlands door to door like a Latter-day Saint. Then you turned me out at the top of the stair, and you took all the glory that you just couldn't share. I've never been so disabused, I've never been so mad. I've never been served anything that tasted so bad. You might need a friend any day now, any day. Oh, my brother, be careful. You are drifting away. Throw me a roll on the rolling tide. What did you want it to be? You said it's him or me. The way you made it, that's the way it will be. The way you made it, that's the way it will be.
Gillian Welch, David Rawlings playing right here in Studio Q. That song, The Way It Will Be, that's from the new Gillian Welch album, The Harrow and the Harvest. And they join us here live in Studio Q, and you can both grab a seat here. Appreciate that.
All right.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
How's the tour treating you?
Good. We're about 3 weeks in to a, I don't know, what is it, a 9-week chunk, and then we take a 2-week break, and then we resume, and we roll all the way into December. So it's still kind of early days.
I'm surprised with the way you perform that, because it's a single microphone, your guitars aren't plugged in, you're not wearing headsets.
No, we can
I didn't
hear,
know people could do that.
we can hear each other better that way, you know, without the headphones and stuff. And from kind of our first tours, coming and playing in radio stations, there was no way we could expect, you know, an engineer who just met us to kind of understand what we wanted out of the guitars and how they should be mixed and how the voices should be mixed. And so we just started playing into one microphone.
I mean, so many of the records that we love, you know, the old records were made that way when there only was one microphone and you had to know how to blend it in the air yourself. And it's a really fun way to play. We would play that way live if we could. It's a little much to sort of do the ballet for a couple hours.
I was just going to say, it's exactly like a dance as you move the guitar in and out, and you both move around each other. I mean, you've been called symbiotic in the past. I thought that only referred to singing together. I had no idea you moved together like that as well. There is something about this record. It's simultaneously joyful. It's mournful. Is it an emotional frame of mind that you often feel yourself?
I guess so. I mean, I've always been one of those people who, if I got a new record, it was guaranteed the first song I was going to love would be the saddest song on it. I think a lot of people are that way. You know, I think it's well understood that the blues make you feel good, you know, so sadness and joy are very much related. But I think on this record, you know, there's a lot of melancholy, there's a lot of sadness. I know my partner Dave has said rather quippily that this is, you know, 10 different kinds of sad, really.
Is that something, though, that only comes out when you're writing music, or is that something that you have in you?
Well, clearly it's in me if it comes out. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, if the songs aren't connected to something inside you, I don't know that you can really play them or I mean, we're just not committed to the songs that we write that feel as though they're just something that, happened or an exercise or something like that.
yeah, all the songs that we end up playing and putting on records have to be close enough to some truth in our lives that they'll bear up over the years. Because, we live with these things, well, now and forever. A song is forever in its way.
There are a lot of trials and tragedies, and the dark side of life is very present through the whole record. Is that revealing your own worldview, or is that just a preference when it comes to the kind of songs you want to play?
Well, I did take an 8-year break between these records, and it was not really a voluntary break. It was necessitated by creative dissatisfaction. I wouldn't. It would be incorrect to call it writer's block. It was really. We just didn't like the songs we were writing, Dave and I, and that kind of led to a bit of a frustrating downward spiral in the creativity, but as you said, there's a joyfulness and a kind of stoic optimism in this record. This record is actually written, once we sort of came out of that sort of fallow time, and is sort of written from the other side of it, which is usually the case with our songs. It's one of the things that's become clear in hindsight is we can't actually write when we're miserable. And too worried and too stressed and too hurried. The more we tried to speed up making this record, the harder it got. It only happened when we sort of slowed down.
But you didn't stop writing completely. You were just writing songs that you weren't happy with.
That's right. There are notebooks full of discards.
So how'd you snap out of it then?
Making David's record was a really good turning point. On some level, I'd started to wonder if we would ever like songs that we wrote again. And so writing Dave's record and liking those songs and enjoying that process, that was really good.
Yeah, it seemed as though, and there was an interesting moment where, it had been so long and there was so much pent-up anticipation within ourselves and within other people that we knew to to just jump right into making Gil's record, but there was a feeling, and I had a feeling sort of with my producer hat on, that we needed to buy a little time, that things had just turned, and if we could take a few of those songs and add them into some other stuff that I'd done in the past and make a record, it would give us a little more time to find our feet. And it worked out really well because the vast majority of this record was made in the months of October and November and December and of January of last year. So
yeah, it's actually a very recent crop of songs,
I didn't try to describe your musical style in the introduction because you have resisted just about any label anybody's ever tried to apply to you. But if a nice person asks you politely,
what kind of music
says,
we play?
Can you please describe for me the kind of music you make, Gillian?
These days, I usually say acoustic folk. That seems to give them some idea. Or I say American roots music. But I try to put the word acoustic in there because, of course, saying you play folk music these days does not in any way mean that you are an acoustic musician, So
thanks, Bob.
For going electric on us.
My headphones just fell off.
But you would know that because you're in the middle of doing the festival circuit right now. You've seen a lot of. Are you surprised with what you see on folk festival stages?
No, it's been this way for over a decade. It's one of the funny things that first happened the first time we ever played like the Newport Folk Festival in Rhode Island, which we're about to do again. So this was with our first record. This is in '96, and Nora Guthrie, Woody's granddaughter, was waiting there on the side of the stage and ran up to us, kind of teary-eyed when we came off stage, never having met us. And she hugged me, and she basically said, "Wow, you're really folk." And this was in the context of the Newport Folk Festival. I think we were the first people she'd seen all day play a set of music with 2 acoustic guitars. And she was very moved. It's a moving thing. I mean, to me, the instruments you play the music on, it's really part of the music. And we take great care about the sounds we make. I love the sound of acoustic guitars dearly, deeply. At this point, Dave and I have devoted our lives to that sound.
And there came a time, and I don't exactly know, some sort of like convenience thing precipitated it, where everyone started plugging in their guitars. And, it's hard to, there's never been, in some applications it's fine, but for what we do, it would take all the atmosphere away from what we do. And, you can look back and see Simon and Garfunkel playing in Central Park with microphones on their acoustic guitars. It's possible to, it's not an impossibility, but it sort of became the norm. And I think that moves the acoustic guitar close enough to the electric in a lot of ways that it just functions differently. And it's hard to get that feeling that I hear on a lot of old records that I love, or that I see in a lot of old concert footage.
Yeah, and I think people felt like they just couldn't compete, like they were losing the volume game. And we have just sort of opted out of that game. We've just, it's okay to be quiet.
And you don't just do that in live performances. This record and all of your previous records are all analog.
They are. Yeah, that's the best way to record acoustic instruments. We work to analog tape. I should really let Dave talk about it. He's our engineering mastermind.
Do you have to make sacrifices to do that?
No, in our world, the use of what digital recording, it wouldn't really actually get us anything. We don't need more tracks. We don't need to slide things around in time. We don't need to tune things. There's nothing that it gets us. We don't need more
choices.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of choices.
So I have this feeling again where in a lot of cases, the Pro Tools revolution happened because it was a commerce issue. It was people saying, well, we can make these records more affordably. We can make it faster. And, I'm just not interested in when an artist is painting a picture to go, how could I do this quicker? How could I do this cheaper?
How could I do this easier? Yeah, I don't want easier.
Up until about the middle of the 70s, everything in the recording world was pointed towards how can we make a better sounding record? How can we make something more adventurous or more interesting? And that's not to say that there are genres of music, there are entire things that this digital world has spawned that are wonderful, valid art forms that I love. But there
it
are
doesn't
also
help us.
Yeah, it doesn't help us, and it doesn't help some other things. So I just kind of,
And talking about the music itself, it's often described as new and old at the same time. You've been called the patron saint of the modern old-timey sound. What is it, or what is it that draws you to those sounds from the past, sounds of the past?
Well, there's certainly a sort of human universality to folk music and to these sounds. To me, you're really, I love the really sort of fundamental issues of a lot of the folk music. It's heartbreak and poverty and, disillusion
And you're looking at a genre of music where it's before entertainment had sort of sorted itself out, whereas you got your drama on television and you got your comedy here, and the folk songs that have survived for hundreds and hundreds of years have all of that stuff in them. They deal with it's a more complete world picture, and I think Gillian and I are both fascinated by that and want to write music that's a little more expansive than this is a dance song.
it's true. I want to be able to deal with the heaviest, darkest topics if I wish to, stuff that maybe today finds its way more into feature films and novels. Dave and I choose to deal with it in, modern folk music.
But you grew up in sunny Los Angeles with a loving family.
Yes.
So what's with all the angst?
Oh my. Well, geez, that's a long topic. People are people. Angst finds a home where it will. It's a rough, tough world out there, no matter where you are. And
one of the things that happened since the 60s, and even prior to that, is that you were as likely in the time period when Gillian was growing up to find this music in a place like Los Angeles as you were anywhere in the United States. She happened to go to a elementary school where there were some ex-hippies teaching, and they sang Woody Guthrie songs, and they sang American folk music every single day. And that's where she learned that music as a child. And, she could have been in the heart of Appalachia going to a school, and that wouldn't have necessarily been happening. You might have picked it up elsewhere, but, and that had become... it's since the 60s. The first folk revival happened in New York City.
It's true. For a while, as folk music's been coming out of the cities, people seem to forget that, But it's funny because for Dave and I both, it's been a constant something, invisible has throughout both of our lives been driving us towards where we are. All of these decisions were voluntary, but not necessarily conscious. I asked for a guitar when I was 7. Why? I don't know. I thought it was cool, Yeah,
I was in Rhode Island sitting on a dock fishing, singing story songs in my head. I would, as soon as I heard a song like Bad Bad Leroy Brown or The Gambler or anything that touched on, that were the children, those songs were the children of the original folk songs.
Right.
Those were the songs I was interested in.
And then both Dave and I pick up and move to Nashville,
Because in the early 90s, Townes Van Zandt is there, and we know that, and Emmylou Harris is there, and Steve Earle is there, and Guy Clark is there,
and Bill Monroe is still alive and there, and everybody is there in this world that we love,
When I ask about the angst, I guess the question comes from when I hear you both sing, and when I hear the songs lyrically, and when I hear the outpouring, the soulfulness of it, I can't believe that you haven't lived every word of it, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Who says I haven't?
Good point.
Yes, as I always say, if you want to talk to the people who write the songs, you're not talking to them. Because it's sort of a different thing,
I've been terribly misinformed then. Are you ever tempted to add some ornamentation to the music, to go, I love the sound of an acoustic guitar too, but are you ever tempted to add something else to, and you have in the past in other records?
We have in the past, yeah. And of course we have the Dave Rawlings machine to have a more rompin', stompin', full string band sound with coronet even. But
Do you have to resist? Did you have to resist dressing this album?
No, no. The great thing, I mean, one of the first things we were absolutely sure of and committed to going into this project is that it was going to be just the two of us playing the instruments that we play. It had been, I mean, of course we love the duet, but we had stepped away from it for a while to do some experimenting and to make Dave's records and to play on other people's records. And I, for my part, had just incredible sort of pent-up ferocity to get back at it. I'm very committed to this sound. For one thing, I mean, it comes from the sort of great, American, the duet tradition, of all those brother teams and great duet. The Monroe brothers, the Stanley brothers, the Delmore brothers, the Blue Sky Boys, the Everly brothers, the Leuven brothers. That's kind of where Dave and I took our blueprint from. But it's great. One of the things that was so exciting when we started playing this way is it felt like that road had been abandoned to a certain degree. And I was so excited that it felt like there was still more to be done, that it wasn't played out.
Yeah, and there's a microcosm, when you take the two instruments and the two voices and you decide that this is your world and you want to make it as rich or as rewarding as an orchestra track with Frank Sinatra singing on top, or a full rock band, or some Neil Young track or something that you love, and you think, well, how can we create those feelings, and how can we get something that is as rich a tapestry with just these sounds? It's a great and creative way to work.
You have made a point of not embroiling yourself in the sort of hit-making side of music. You have done exactly what you want to do, but it's got to be tempting for a performer, though, to try to get the biggest audience to hear you. That's never been a temptation for you to try to.
Well, of course it is, but we have to do it the way we can live with, which is we're always trying to write better songs. If you write Sounds of Silence, you can stand up there with one guitar and two voices and play it for 300,000 people. You got to write the songs. So I'm not trying to get there any other way. We just want to play in a way that people can understand and really enjoy. And then we just want to have something that people want to listen to.
Yeah, to make a record, it was funny to make a record like Soul Journey. There were a batch of songs that felt like they needed a backbeat, and that is what drove the feeling of that record. And then we put a few solo things that Gil had done and sort of made more of like a potpourri kind of a record that wasn't as unified as a feeling. And that was a very conscious choice to give it that looser feeling after something as claustrophobic, and I mean that in the most loving way, as Time the Revelator, which I'm crazy about how that record feels and sounds, but it's very much there in one place until the applause that hits in the middle of like the fifth or sixth song that is a live track and startles you out of this little world, But even something like that, it was song-driven. It's funny to realize when you make a record like that, there's a few more radio stations that can play this song, Look at Miss Ohio, because it has a bass and drums on it. But that would just be a silly reason to do anything, to think about what radio stations want.
But as a singer and a songwriter, is there... does popular music, does commercially successful music have anything to offer you? Do you get anything out of it?
You do out of the good songs.
Yeah, you do out of the good songs. I mean, all that Dave and I do is sort of eat and breathe and dream music. That's really all we do, and drive these days. So, I mean, really, most of the time, I listen to music that I think will feed my head. So, I'm not listening to that much popular music at this moment, because I tend to go for the strongest stuff I can, the most undiluted source.
Every album has got a story behind it, and the story of this album seems to be that it took 8 years to make.
That is the predominant question. People want to know why. Why did it take so long? Yeah.
You've explained part of that to us. Is there anything you left out in that struggle of getting this all down?
It's a very hard thing to discuss. I mean, you're basically the main thing that was going on was a sort of creative dilemma, and that's so close to a spiritual dilemma. I mean, how do you even talk about it? It's so intangible in its way,
And how deep did that go?
Very deep. Not to make too big a thing, but yeah, I mean, considering that this is all we do, when that's not working, it's somewhat cataclysmic, And I think the title of the record was meant to speak to that. It was rather harrowing to come through. But, I'm talking to you now from the other side of that, and it's all okay. I wouldn't really have it any other way. I actually feel like there are aspects of this record that would not be there were it not for how we got to this point. I think there's a maturity in the record and a rather dark, wry humor. I actually think it's our most humorous album, that has to do with, it's that kind of, crazy, giddy chuckle you get in a way when you almost wreck your car and don't. There's a little bit of that in there.
Definitely gallows humor.
Is it about, I mean, it's between the harrow and the harvest, is it about the time between the harrow and the harvest, or is it about...
I think it's the necessity of the relation of one to the other.
You've got to break up all those clumps of clay before you...
You do, yeah.
And the record itself ended up moving. It sequenced itself. I was just, the first time we decided to play any of the songs that we'd recorded next to each other, I said, let's do this one, and then that one, and then that one, and that one, and it ended up being the sequence that we kept. And strangely, after listening to it once, I realized, we've basically put all of the minor songs first, and then it sort of releases into the major songs.
There's this great sigh of relief that I feel every time that you hit Down Along the Dixie Line, which is the first truly major track on the record.
I didn't know I was hearing that, but now I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I do want to get you back to play another song, but I've got to ask you about the creative partnership. I mean, so many people have called you, as I said off the top, symbiotic. Many reviewers have commented that this record seems to come from one voice. When I watch you here, it sounds and looks as though it comes from one voice.
It kind of is at this point. I mean, we're completely and utterly a team. That's a strangely mundane word to describe what we do, but we are an honest-to-goodness songwriting team. So literally, the voice of the songs is both of us. It's we've written songs at this point every way you can. I've started them, Dave has started them, I've written the music, he's written the music. I mean, truly, every possible permutation.
At this point, a good line might come to mind, and we might have to have a serious, long discussion to try to even begin to remember which one of us thought of it.
Well, it's kind of immaterial at this point. It doesn't really matter. I think we've completely assimilated that, we are a creative team.
Do you ever lose track of who's singing?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. It's happened a number of times. There's a couple recordings. I know we sang some harmony on a Ryan Adams record, and we think they credited us wrong.
No, it says you, but it's just me singing high.
Yeah. Because sometimes Dave will sing above me, so you can't even be sure that he's the low part. And then to complicate things even more, that first song we played in the studio, we're singing in unison. And so it's very hard to unravel who's doing what. And I feel like that's more so on this record than ever before. That's spilling over into the guitar playing. I'm playing, if it's possible, even more minimally, with the sort of confidence that my part is going to be completed by what Dave does. So I've stripped it back even more. It's even more kind of, I don't know, fractal or, something.
You are going to play us one more song before you go. What are you going to play for us now?
What are we going to play? We talked about 2 different numbers. We didn't decide. You want to do
you said you
goes?
Yeah.
That's the way it goes?
Yeah. We'll continue with songs that begin the way.
All right.
I noticed there are a few of them on the record.
There's a few of them. It's a theme. All right.
Becky Johnson bought the farm, put a needle in her arm. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. And her brother laid her down in the cold Kentucky ground. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. That's the way that it goes. Everybody's buying little baby clothes. That's the way that it is. Oh, there was a time when she and I were friends. And Miranda ran away, took a cat and left L.A. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. She was busted, broken flat, and had to sell that pussycat. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. That's the way that it goes. Everybody's buying little baby clothes. That's the way that it is. Oh, there was a time when he and I were friends. See the brightest ones of all early in October fall. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. While the dark ones go to bed with good whiskey in their heads. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. Tell Musso, I'll tell Frank, that's the way that it goes, that's the way. Did he throw her down a well? Did she leave him for that swell? That's the way that it goes, that's the way. That's the way that it goes. Everybody's buying little baby clothes. That's the way. Oh, there was a time when all of us were friends. When you lay me down to rest, leave a pistol in my vest. That's the way that it goes, that's the way. Do you miss my gentle touch? Did I hurt you very much? That's the way that it goes, that's the way. Buying little baby clothes. That's the way that it ends. Well, there was a time when you and I were friends.
Gillian Welch, David Rawlings playing The Way It Goes from the new album The Harrow and the Harvest. They are on tour now, and for details you can visit GillianWelch.com. Gillian Welch, Dave Rawlings, joining us here in Studio Q.